Levi Brackman here, CEO of Invown, the marketplace for real estate equity. Today I'm going to talk about crowdfunding for real estate, what it is and what it isn't, and why it's really important and how you can get involved with it. And I'll go through the different types of crowdfunding for real estate, the different platforms, where Invown fits in, and how Reg CF fits in. Now, just a quick thing is that I am not an attorney, so everything that I'm explaining here is not legal advice. I'm just doing this video in order to educate the public of things that exist out there already. And please do not take anything that I'm saying here either as legal advice or any kind of investment advice. Who are we at Invown? Well, I'm the CEO and founder. I'm Levi Brackman. Yaakov Shaol is our Chief Technology Officer. Jacob Karlberg is our engineer. Frank Chavez is our head engineer and also head of marketing. And our legal counsel is Mark Roderick. Let's start off with what a security is. So the Supreme Court came up with this test called the Howey test. And it says that a security is basically anything that is a common enterprise where there's a reasonable expectation of profits that are going to be derived from the efforts of others. So if you're not actively involved in the enterprise and you're not working in the enterprise, and all the money that is coming to you, the profits from the enterprise is coming to you based on the efforts of others, not on your own efforts, but you're still an owner in the enterprise, and therefore you get part of the profits. What you own, the ownership stake that you own in that company, is a security. That's the definition of a security based on the Howey test. And how that relates to real estate is that in real estate, very often you have a lot of passive investors, what are known as limited partners. And the limited partner doesn't have any active involvement in the real estate deal. They're not collecting rents, they're not doing any renovations, they're not involved in finding the deal. That's all the general partner. The limited partner, or the LP, is not involved in any of that, and therefore they are passive investors, and therefore what they own in the company that owns the real estate is a security. So what is crowdfunding now? Well, crowdfunding is where the funding source comes from many individuals rather than a few entities. So, for example, if you went and you got your funding from one private equity firm or you got it from a bank, then that wouldn't be crowdfunding. But if you got it from many individuals, then that would be considered crowdfunding. The stock market is the original type of crowdfunding. Lots of people come in and they invest in a company, and therefore capital is raised from the public on the stock market. So the US stock market is a type of crowdfunding. And then there are others like Kickstarter, Lending Club, and others. They're examples of crowdfunding. Invown is also a crowdfunding site. So now, how do you legally do crowdfunding when what you're selling is securities? Well, the issue here is as follows, that if you're selling securities, then those securities, in order for you to sell it to the public or sell them in general, they need to be registered with the Security and Exchange Commission, known as the SEC. If you don't register with the Security and Exchange Commission and you sell securities, that could be breaking the law. So there are a number of exemptions that the law carves out, which says in certain circumstances, you may not have to register your security with the Security and Exchange Commission in order to be able to sell it to other people. And generally, in real estate, there are 4 exemptions that are used. And those exemptions are really, when people say the exemptions, 506B, 506C, Reg CF, Reg A, they're really referring to parts of the law of the Jobs Act, which came into effect in 2015. They're referring to parts of the Jobs Act which these exemptions are spoken about. And let's go through them one by one. So you have a 506B. And a 506B is an exemption that says that if you'd like to sell securities, in other words, pieces of your company, to the public, you can do so as long as you don't do any advertising of it, and you're mostly selling it to accredited investors, but you're allowed to have 35 sophisticated non-accredited investors. And if those conditions are met, then you don't have to register your securities with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So again, it's only 35 non-accredited investors. Now, what does accredited investor mean? Accredited investor is somebody who either earns $200,000, or if they're a couple, they earn together $300,000 a year, or they have a net worth of more than $1 million outside of their primary residence. So their net worth, in other words, the assets that they own, amount to $1 million on top of anything they own in their primary residence. If those conditions are met, then they're considered accredited investors. A 506c exemption means that you're able to raise money. 506c says that only if you have accredited investors and you have made sure that there is a third party verifying that those investors are accredited, then you can have them invest or buy your securities, and you're able to advertise the fact that you're selling these securities. With a 506b, again, you're not allowed to do any advertising, and it can be 35 sophisticated non-accredited investors. Whereas with a 506c, you can advertise, but no non-accredited investors can invest. And the investors who do invest, you have to have verified that they are accredited. Now, with regard to Reg CF, that is an exemption that says you don't have to register your securities like you would with an IPO, but it has to be offered through either a funding portal or through a broker-dealer. And the max that can be raised in any given 12-month period by any individual, so not just entity, but also the individuals who run that entity, is $5 million. But anyone can invest in it, and there is an ability to also advertise it. And then finally, there's a Reg A, what's known as Reg A Plus, and that has to go through some sort of registration with the Securities and Exchange Commission. And that's a process which usually takes quite a long time. And then the individuals or the company can then sell those directly to the public, and they can raise up to $75 million from the general public, and they can advertise. And that's, in a sense, like a mini IPO. So those are the exemptions, if you like, where people raise money for real estate using one of these four exemptions, either a 506B, a 506C, Reg CF, or Reg A, or what's known as a Reg A plus. So why is this important? Because a lot of people know about the 506Bs and the 506Cs. People have also heard quite a bit about the Reg A, but people have not heard so much about the Reg CF. And one of the reasons for that is because Reg CF had a limit of the ability to raise only $1 million in any 12-month period, which changed in March 2021, where the limit was raised to $5 million, which means that the entity can raise up to $5 million in a 12-month period, which means that now it's relevant to real estate deals, because our $5 million raise is significant. So because that wasn't so significant before 2021, most people in real estate know about the 506Bs and 506Cs and Reg As, which have higher limits, and people weren't really doing Reg CFs. Well, now Reg CF is much more relevant because you can raise up to $5 million from anyone, as long as it's done through a funding portal or a broker-dealer, in any 12-month period. So now, these places where you can actually raise money from the public, or which raise money from the public, there are a bunch of different platforms that do it, and each of them kind of use their own regulations. Some don't seem to be using much regulation at all, and they have their own way of doing things, and no one's really sure. And I guess they themselves think that it's potentially legal, but there's no known legal kind of status for them. But let's talk about Realty Mogul, for example. They're very well known. They're usually a equity, but they're only for accredited investors usually. I think they have a Reg A offering, which is for non-accredited investors. That Reg A offering is a fund. It's not deal by deal. You have, again, some crypto exchanges which are based on real estate. I'm not going to talk much about those. You have us, Invown. We're equity again. We're using Reg CF. Again, people can raise directly from the public on Invown. Then you have ground floor, which is debt. One of the key differences between a Reg CF offering and a Realty Mogul, which does Reg A and 506Cs and 506Bs, is that the Realty Mogul themselves are doing the fundraising from their investors, both in the Reg A case and the 506Cs and 506Bs. Very often it's their investors who are investing in the deal as in a sort of roll-up vehicle. Whereas with the Reg CF, it's not the platform itself which does any of the fundraising. The fundraising is done by the entities, by the companies, by the real estate deals, which are raising the money. It's just done on the platform. Okay, the platform is what facilitates the raise, but doesn't actually conduct the raise. So there's a key difference there as well. Then you have people like Ground4, which basically do debt. So let's talk about the legal definition of crowdfunding. So capital raising online while deterring fraud and unethical disclosure act of 2012. That's what it's really called. Crowdfunding, which is Title 3 or Reg CF, Title 3 of the Jobs Act. And you have Title 1, Title 2. Title 2 is 506Cs and 506Bs and Reg A. And then you have Title 3, which is capital raising online while deterring fraud and unethical non-disclosure act of 2012, or it's known as the Crowdfunding Act or Reg CF. So what are the benefits of crowdfunding or using Reg CF and therefore raising money on Invown? So number one, I would say that you're in control. So when you go to some of these other platforms, really they are making the deal available to their investors, and therefore they're going to demand certain terms in the deal, etc. Whereas on Reg CF, it's you fundraising from the public on our platform, and therefore you're in control. You decide the terms, etc. We don't give you term sheets. You give the term sheets to the investors. So it's your raise, your deal, your control. Number two, you raise from anyone. You're not limited just to accredited investors. With Reg CF, you can raise just from the general public. And the other thing is what we offer as Invown is we offer full solution and support. So we will provide legal documents. We'll help you file with the SEC. There's a Form C you have to file with the SEC. You can customize your investment memo. You get support, etc. The whole entirety of the process, which leads up to actually doing the raise, we are able to support you every step of the way, including with a lot of the legal documents. There's forms that you fill out, and then we provide templatized legal documents, which were actually drafted by a lawyer, by our lawyer in this case, Mark Roderick. So what is a funding portal? Just the legal definition of what is a funding portal and why is it, what does it do? Well, a funding portal is an entity that facilitates crowdfunding transactions, and it must register with the SEC and gain membership of FINRA. That's exactly what we did. We registered with the SEC. We went through a whole process where we got membership from FINRA, and we must disclose information consistent with, but less extensive than that is required for broker dealers. So there's a lot of disclosures that we need to disclose to the general public to make sure they're protected. What are we not allowed to do? We're not allowed to offer any investment advice or make recommendations. Again, this video doesn't have any investment advice. We're not making any recommendations. We're just trying to explain where Reg CF fits in the crowdfunding landscape. We're not allowed to solicit purchases, sales, or offers to buy securities offered or displayed on this platform. So we can't go out there and say, hey, please would you buy this security? Please would you buy that security? We can't offer to buy or sell securities. That's why the sponsor comes on. They're the ones who are offering. They're the ones who are soliciting the purchase of securities for their deal. We're just facilitating it. We're also not allowed to compensate promoters and others to solicit any of the securities. So we're not allowed to solicit for the sale of securities. And we're not allowed to hold, possess, or handle investor funds or securities. That's why all the money goes into a third-party escrow account, which is held on behalf of the investors and the issuers until such time that the deal closes. And we are required to provide investors with educational material. You'll find all the educational material on our platform. We have to take measures to reduce risk of fraud. So we have to do background checks, and we have to do some kind of due diligence on each deal. We have to make available information about the issuer and the offering on the platform. And we facilitate the offer and sale of crowdfunding securities, but we don't actually ever solicit for the sale for securities. So how it works? Well, there's really 4 steps here. You go on invown.com and you decide that you want to list an offering. You click on list an offering and you sign up and you submit, choose how much you want to raise, what the deal is, the basic terms. Once you're approved to list on Invown, we'll probably have a meeting before then, and then we'll prepare all the legal documents. If you don't have an LLC agreement, we'll help you with that, help you form an LLC, all the terms and the subscription agreement. We'll walk you through all of that. We'll provide all the templates for that. Again, these are your documents, your deal. We can help you with all of that. The Form C is the same thing. It's similar to a PPM, a private placement memorandum, but it's filed with the SEC and has a different format to it. Again, we have some templates which can help you with all of that. We'll help you file it with the SEC, and then you can launch your fundraise. And then once the raise is successfully concluded, it's transferred from third-party escrow account to you. Now, one of the things to be clear here is that we will require that you have the ability to raise the funds before we actually allow you to go live on the account, on the platform. But we do have this thing called test the waters, and in the test the waters scenario, you can actually have the deal up there and gauge interest from investors, and also get reservations from investors where people say how much they're willing to invest in the deal, and then you can see, so they're kind of like soft commits which you can get on the platform in the test the water stage, and then when you see that you have enough, then we can go live, file the Form C, and you can actually have a live deal going. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation about the differences between Reg CF, 506Cs, 506Bs, and Reg A+, and how Invown, as a platform that allows you to raise money from the general public, how that fits in, and how, if you are a member of the general public, how you can invest in real estate-backed entities on the platform. And again, just a quick disclosure that none of this is an investment advice, none of this is legal advice, just general information out there for you to learn from. If you need legal advice, please go and seek for attorneys. If you need investment advice, please go and seek a licensed investment professional. We do not give any investment advice or any legal advice. And finally, I will also say that any investment on Invown is considered to be highly speculative. Investments can go up and they can go down, and when they go down, you could lose the entirety of your investment. So that's important to keep in mind, the risks involved in investing in private investment opportunities. If you have any questions, reach out to me. It's levi@invown.com, levi@invown.com. Thank you so much for listening.